implement methods to cut down on these accidents, and now we'll get into these methods.
Yeah, so first we researched three specific current pieces of legislation in Maryland that I wanted to briefly introduce. First, the Senate Bill 590 makes reckless driving an incarcerable offense, which basically just means that offenders can face jail time. And it also loosens the definition of reckless driving, and it also strengthens the penalties for those who were convicted. And House Bill 433, this is kind of similar to the Senate bill, but it establishes stricter penalties for people who are already convicted. And specifically, if another offense occurs within 3 years of the first one, the offender can receive up to 90 days in jail. And lastly, the House Bill 1139 allows judges to order ISA, which basically advises drivers of the current speed limit and then warns them if they're exceeding it. And a lot of repeat offenders get the type of ISA called active ISA, which limits the speed of the vehicle so that they physically cannot go over the speed limit. And essentially all of these laws are about punishing repeat offenders and keeping dangerous drivers off the road.
So the next part of our research was to look at out-of-state legislation. So we have a couple of bills for that. First was one from Wisconsin, which permits jail time for a first violation. And that guarantees that first-time reckless driving charges without bodily harm do not result in immediate incarceration because the point is to prevent reckless driving, not to increase the number of people incarcerated. The Virginia House bill talks about something similar to what Jessica just talked about putting in ISA. It orders high-risk drivers, mostly those who are caught exceeding 100 miles per hour, to install ISA. The Connecticut bill also stiffens penalties similar to the Wisconsin bill, and the Delaware Code Title creates a tiered penalty structure, which makes it easier when it comes to deciding the punishment for when there is incidences of reckless driving. And specifically, it's very important to note that it distinguishes between first-time and repeat offenders because there is a different level of punishment required in that case.
For statistics, we found that 30% of all traffic deaths in the US are caused by speeding and reckless driving. And nationwide, in the past 3 years, there was a yearly average of about 120,000 deaths. And for Maryland specifically, there was about an average about 600 per year in 2021 and 2023. And for overall speeding related crashes, there was about 7,800 crashes per year in Maryland alone. And these numbers basically show that reckless driving is very dangerous and a lot of the time.
All right, so now for some of the recommendations we had. So in terms of House Bill 433 and Senate Bill 590, which are kind of conjoined, we want to increase the price of fines after each subsequent reckless driving offense, similar to the Wisconsin bill. As you get more reckless driving incidents, the fine actually goes up, which will reduce the amount of people that recklessly drive. The next recommendation we have is to have more serious and longer suspensions of people's licenses. So at the current minute, it's 6 months, but if we can, for the first offense and 12 months for the second, but if we increase this suspension, more people would not drive so recklessly, and it would deter them. And finally, we have installing more speed cameras along the road, and this once again would deter people from driving. From speeding or from aggressive driving or impaired driving, as they know that their license could be taken away as everything would be on video. And then finally, for some of our proposed legislation that we have, so as I mentioned, we can increase the amount of fines and penalties, such as a suspension of license. And then we can also increase the fine amount, like in Wisconsin's Assembly Bill 55. And the main point of this is to deter people from incautious driving, but also it won't ruin their lives as jail time can definitely risk people getting jobs or succeeding in the future. However, we have a certain case where if bodily harm is caused, it is fair to implement jail time and increase fines. And we actually got this inspiration from the Wisconsin bill. And it seems fair because if you're putting the lives of others at risk, you should definitely pay the price for that. And finally, our last proposed legislation is that um, a minimum of a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit should be instilled for reckless driving, which counts as 30 miles per hour or more above the speed limit. And this is because it's kind of hard to not drive over the speed limit, especially at lower speeds. So if we constitute it at 45 miles per hour as a minimum, it will make more sense in the long term.
And then lastly, some quick implications. According to Sergeant Kebb in Maryland, effective October 1st of this year, the penalty for reckless driving is going to increase. And that bill aims at an incarceration period of 60 days, which makes people's lives worse, like Rohan was talking about. So instead, changing this platform to include things like higher fines or suspensions of licenses for longer periods of time can deter people from recklessly driving, but it also contributes to a budget for the local government to take use for further developments. And overall, again, the point is to keep people from being incarcerated while also deterring them from driving recklessly.
Thank you to Delegate Wu and Miss Jody for letting us be able to research this topic and for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rohan and Jessica and Grace. And I really appreciate you have a really straightforward presentation. Put everything together. It's pretty easy to follow. And really appreciate your effort doing this research. I think there's one point I want to highlight. So when there's a bill, for example, talk about an intelligent system installed on the car who are intoxicated or something, right? Or have reckless driving record. So I think that bill actually didn't pass. There's a huge difference between there's a bill or a past legislation, right? Because during last summer, actually, we did some research as well. So what can we do? And then we actually talk about the intelligent speeding control system, which is happening in Europe. And so then I talked to some colleagues, nobody really liked it. So I said, okay, I'm dropping that idea. That's we didn't propose a bill on this. But at the same time, this issue has been a consistent issue. As you mentioned earlier, we want to make sure, right, people drive recklessly should be held accountable. At the same time, we want that as a mean of deterrence. It's not try to really punish them, make their life miserable, right? Unless they cause like cause other people dead, right? So it's a little challenging to find the balance there. And raising the fine, I think that makes sense. Sometimes I agree with that. People have to pay attention to what they're doing on the road. Thank you very much for this research.